This video is going to give you an introduction into the difference between two of my popular series. The first, Differentiated Instruction with Menus, and the newest one, Differentiating Instruction with Menus in the Inclusive Classroom. From this point forward, by the way, I'm going to refer to the original as the white book and the inclusive classroom as the yellow book, just because it will be easier than saying the title. See, even now I'm slipping over it. The title multiple times. In order to understand the difference, the first thing I want to do is address the purpose of the original set of books that came out. This is the grade 3 through 5 series, and it came out in 2007. It was originally intended and originally written for our gifted audience, meaning that when the ideas were brainstormed and the types of menus were selected, I was thinking gifted. Now, that being said, as we all know, teachers will use any resource, they'll modify, they will take what they can and use it. That's exactly what's happened with this series. In fact, it's made it incredibly popular. I know that I have had some high school science teachers taking this grades 3 through 5 science book and using that with their high school special ed students. I know I've got some middle school teachers grabbing the 3 through 5 set and using it with their on-level students. And I know I have some actual 3 through 5 teachers taking the K2 books and using it with their on-level students. So it's one of those things where as teachers, we take a resource, if it's good, we make it work. Well, that's what's been happening with this particular set. However, the white book was always intended as written for gifted students. Now, we know that you're doing the modifications, and what has happened, I kind of shared that. The publisher knew that that was kind of going on, and they contacted me about a year ago and said, all right, is there something that we can do that can actually be menus more for the inclusive classroom, but we didn't want to take away from the series that's doing so well? So we kind of thought about it, and I said, I know what's going on, because right now, let's say that you chose a point-based menu out of this book. This is written gifted, so the goal here was 100 points. I know that teachers are taking these menus and contracts and contracting them, meaning that you may have a special education student who needs their modifications, so their goal is 70. You may have an on-level student, their goal might be 80, and then we leave our gifted student, their goal is 100. So you're taking some of what's here and you're contracting it. Or you're saying, okay, well, on this menu, that product's worth 30 points, but for you, it's going to be worth 40 points. Knowing that that student needed a little bit of a modification. So in knowing that we kind of want to be able to include our inclusive students and maybe take some of the burden off the teachers of doing the modification of these menus, we decided that by addressing these issues of what you're already doing and publishing it, we would be able to come up with, I'm calling it a companion series, meaning that this book, the yellow book, is a companion to the white. They both stand alone. Meaning if I have all gifted students or the majority of my students are gifted, this is the perfect book for them. I won't have to do many modifications. But if you find yourself needing to modify this a lot, this yellow inclusive book is actually a really good solution. And I kind of wanted to take a second and show you the insides so that you can really see what the difference is. All of the white series have anywhere between 25 and 32 menus, meaning that they cover 20, see now I'm even confusing myself, 25 to 32 different topics. In designing the yellow inclusive book, what I did is I chose 20 of the most popular, most needed topics and designed menus for the 20. However, these menus are going to be specifically for your special ed and your on-level students. And here's kind of how they might work. Again, I mentioned this one, purely gifted as written. This one is actually special ed on-level as written. But using them together, you can do some incredible things. So here's kind of what you're used to seeing. In our white book, this is the original, the gifted, I chose the prime versus composite menu just because it happened to be the one that I marked and that just happened to be the one that I saw. But if you take a look at a menu in the original, you'll see that this is a 258 over prime versus composite. The graphic on the very bottom has the young lady and she's using a calculator sitting at a desk. What we have done, I have done with the yellow book, Prime versus composite numbers is one of those things that our students always really need because they have trouble understanding it. So you're going to find it in the yellow book, but you're going to find more options in the yellow book. In the white book, you remember I showed you what it looked like. In the yellow book, I have prime versus composite numbers, but you'll find there's two menus. There's one on this page and one on this page. You'll notice the graphics look the same. And this is one of those things that when teachers do the flip test, you know how teachers come up and they go through and they go, this is going to look awful strange. Because they're going to look through and they're going to say, how come they multiple printed all of these topics? I didn't actually multiple print all of these. What you have is you have what's called a triangle menu and you have the circle menu. And they are meant to look the same. They also are meant to look exactly like the white book version of the menu. However, the activities have been placed in different places. Meaning that in the white book, what may have been a low-level activity is actually probably a high-level activity on my special ed menu. Or what may have been a middle-level activity on one menu is a higher-level activity here. So the modifications that teachers are already doing are already done on this menu for you. And they're meant to look the same. That's so that when you pass them out in your classroom, the students don't automatically say, how come so-and-so has this menu and I have this menu? And if they look very close to being the same thing, it makes it a little bit easier on you. It also provides multiple different options. Meaning if you have gifted students and you want them to work independently on their menu, they receive one, they can do that. But yet, our special ed and our on-level students can get an appropriate menu for them. The yellow book, the inclusive book, is really good if you have those the bilingual, ELL, on-level, special ed all together. And these have extension activities. I mean, it's not that these don't have any enrichment activities. It's just that these have additional options at the lower level so that on a special ed menu, for example, our students can stay a little bit lower, a little bit longer. So there's so many more options when you begin looking at what you have available between the white one and the yellow one. Together, these give you 3 different versions of the same content. A lot of the activities cross over, but they've been leveled differently. However, that's not always true either. In fact, I would say, I can guarantee you, there are no menus that are exactly the same, meaning that they have all of the same activities all the way through. Because not all of our students need the exact same thing at the various different levels. Okay. So besides the menus being tiered, the yellow book, by the way, has a total of 40 menus because it has 20 topics, it has a low level and a middle level for each of those topics. The gifted menu, of course, the gifted book, the white book, that one only has one menu for each topic, designed gifted. Now, there's 2 other big differences between these 2 books, and it's based on feedback from teachers. If you see me at a conference, if you come up and speak to me when I'm doing a session, any of those things, don't think that if you give me a suggestion I'm not listening, because I do. Here's what has changed between these 2 to be especially helpful for our special ed on-level students. In the white book, 2 of the best pieces that I know that are most helpful to teachers is the Grade It Yourself rubric, or not Grade It Yourself, Grade It All, meaning if they do a play, they do a presentation, they do a poster, one rubric grades it all. And the other big help are the product guidelines, meaning that if they chose to do a play, this gives all the criteria for doing so. I know those 2 things are worth their weight in gold, but I also know that some of my 3-5 teachers are buying or were purchasing the K2 book because the rubric and product guidelines had graphics. And for those students, our gifted students might be okay with these, but for those ELL, bilingual, special education students, they really needed some graphics because that will help bring it home, help the students recall the information. So what you're going to find in the inclusive book are a whole lot of graphics. And let me give you a little idea so that you can kind of see what we're talking about. For example, in my K2 book, I use for the rubric, you're going to find graphics that went with it. This one, this is of course my 3-5 book. you're going to find that the rubric is all graphics, meaning that, well, there's words there too, excuse me, that sounded bad, but you're going to find a graphic that goes with all of the different words that are there. That helps the students understand kind of what's going on. So we've added graphics to the rubric. The other piece are the product guidelines. And your product guidelines, this is your K3, because a lot of people are looking at it and say, hey, that's what that K2 looks like in the white book. Your 3-5 inclusive classroom have had graphics added to all of the product guidelines. The print has also been increased a little bit, so it's a little bit easier for some of our students to read, especially our special ed students. So what you're going to find in here, you have the rubric, which has the support with graphics. You have the product guidelines that has a support of graphics. And then you have 2 menus for 20 different content groups within that grade level. In our white book, you're going to find anywhere from 25 to 32 menus. Your rubrics, your product guidelines don't necessarily have the graphic, but it's designed for gifted. So here's your bottom line that people want to know. Okay, so Lori, which one do I need? Well, my question to you would be, what is your audience? Who are your students? Because if you have in your classroom a huge range, you have special ed, on-level, bilingual, ESL, on-level, advanced level, and gifted. If you have all 3, that gives you 3 menus to choose from for every topic. And you literally can tier those 3. And you can have 3 different menus going on in your classroom. If you have the majority of your students advanced level gifted, the white book is for you. That's who it was always designed for. If you have special ed on level and you still want a little bit of enrichment, the yellow book is for you. And you won't have to do any modifications because it's actually written for your level. Because I know right now, y'all have been purchasing this one and modifying it. So, one, the other, or both. You decide depending on how much of a range you have in your classroom. But it'll be hopefully, between these 2 books, you should be covered on the different content that's available there. Even though I have gone through and kind of shown you and explained to you, and I know I'm holding up books, you're like, I can't really see that, that's okay. Feel free to ask me any other questions that you have as far as the menus, the books. The 3 through 5 books are out now, science and math, language, arts, social studies to follow very quickly. So this whole series is just going to be an incredible help for you teachers that are already differentiating and trying to go through and modify and make it all work for you. So my last statement is always about differentiation is it's who we are and it's how we teach. Thanks so much, and I hope you have a great day.